All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, if you're a sports fan in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley, then things have been very good for you since 2010, sans the Raiders leaving Oakland in favor of Las Vegas. Now, in that time, the San Francisco Giants have won 3 World Series titles. The San Jose Sharks made their only trip to the Stanley Cup final in franchise history back in 2016. The San Francisco 49ers have made a pair of Super Bowl appearances over that stretch. The Stanford Cardinal in football have won 3 Pac-12 championships along with 3 Rose Bowl appearances. And the Golden State Warriors have become a household name in basketball. Now, last night, the Warriors knocked off the Boston Celtics in 6 games to claim their fourth NBA championship in the last 8 years. After losing in the NBA Finals to the Toronto Raptors in 2019, it's been a long trip back to the top of the mountain for the Dubs. The Warriors in that series lost both Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant to season ending injuries before Durant would decide to continue his career with the Brooklyn Nets. Thompson would miss the following season, while both Steph Curry and Draymond Green would miss time during the 2019-2020 NBA season due to injuries as well. And the end result for the Warriors that season was that they were only able to win 15 games. But on the heels of the start of training camp for the 2020-2021 NBA season, Thompson ruptured his Achilles tendon, and this is after he rehabbed so hard to recover from that torn ACL, which meant that now he was going to be out of action for 2 consecutive years. Now, last season, Golden State would qualify for the play-in tournament, but they would not get any further. This season, however, things began to come together for the Warriors as their veteran players such as Curry and Green were healthy, while their 2 year absence from the playoffs would see them get plenty of young talent. And after the Warriors finished the regular season with the second best record in the Western Conference, they were ready to take flight in these NBA playoffs. Golden State got past the Denver Nuggets in the first round in 5 games, the Memphis Grizzlies in the second round in 6 games, and then they disposed of the Dallas Mavericks in the Western Conference Finals in 5 games. And then ultimately, they defeated the Boston Celtics in 6 games to win another NBA championship. Now, after not being named as the finals MVP in the 3 previous victories in the championship round for this core, Steph Curry made his name known throughout this series, and he took home the Finals MVP. He averaged more than 31 points per game, which included going for 34 last night as he helped Golden State close out Boston. And honestly, going into that game last night, you knew that Curry was not going to have 2 consecutive bad shooting games in a row. He was limited to just 16 points in game 5 and going 0 for 9 from downtown. And the Warriors were able to survive that and still get the win. The emergence of young players this season, such as Jordan Poole, we saw Jordan Poole really step it up. He averaged 18 and a half points during the regular season, 17 points off of the bench here in the postseason for Golden State. And you know what? He just has that knack to get going very quickly, a la Vinnie Johnson, the former great Detroit Pistons guard, where you know what, he can just come off that bench, get hot in a hurry, and fill up the stat sheet. Andrew Wiggins, and this was a trade that really didn't raise a lot of eyebrows when it happened. But you think back to what went down. And it all started with the sign and trade that sent Kevin Durant to the Brooklyn Nets back in 2019. Part of that package was that Golden State received D'Angelo Russell. D'Angelo Russell had a solid 1 year run with the Golden State Warriors before the Dubs turned that around and used him as a part of a package to acquire Andrew Wiggins from the Minnesota Timberwolves. And you think about the former number 1 overall pick in Wiggins. And I've said this before. I think the Golden State was a perfect fit for Wiggins. Not that he didn't have success as a scorer in Minnesota, but you just think about it. Andrew Wiggins, what his best asset that he brings to the table is his scoring ability. Now, you go back and you think about Wiggins' time with Minnesota, he would score 20 or 25 points per game, but the Timberwolves would still get blown out. Right now, Wiggins is on a team where you know what he can score 20 points per game, and he simply flies under the radar due to the other talent that is around him on this team. And Wiggins is a guy that he can get lost in the shuffle like he has for the majority of this year with Golden State. And if you focus on the other guys, Wiggins can definitely pick you apart. And it's also funny because you look at it, and once again, Minnesota has basically handed the Golden State Warriors a quality player. Remember, you got to go back to the 2009 NBA draft. The Timberwolves had consecutive first round picks, and they passed on Steph Curry twice. And then right after that, he fell to the Golden State Warriors, and the rest is history. And right here, you add another all star caliber player in Andrew Wiggins. You traded him to Golden State. And of course, once again, the rest is history. The return of Klay Thompson worked almost like a trade because Klay was not there to begin this season for Golden State. He came back mid-season. Obviously, it took some time for him to get his sea legs, and still, Klay is not the Klay that we remember from about 5 or 6 years ago. And that's not a slight to him, but you figure age and the injuries. However, Klay is still a very smart basketball player. He's starting to get his rhythm going as a shooter, and he's still a solid defender. And more importantly, he's a leader for this team. And I think all of those facets of his game were on display in this playoff and championship run for the Golden State Warriors. Then, you just think about so many other intangibles for this team. Draymond Green continuing to be Draymond Green, a solid defender. He is a leader for this team in spite of, how some people might feel about him, but he is a key part of the nucleus for this Warriors run. Then you think about the ownership group for Golden State with Joe Lacob and Peter Guber, and of course Bob Myers as a general manager. And credit to Joe Lacob and Peter Guber because basically these guys have said, you know what, we're okay going over the luxury tax. Then on top of that, they were okay paying their star players in spite of the fact that they were hurt. Clay got hurt, paid for the last couple of years in spite of the fact that he didn't play. They've taken care of Draymond financially. They've taken care of Steph Curry financially. And, you have other teams around the NBA that would have said, you know what, it's time to break this up and start over. But credit to Joe Lacob and Peter Guber. They stayed the course. They, just paid the luxury tax. And at the end of the day, Bob Myers found a way to retool this team over the last couple of years. Remember, a couple of years ago, they had the second overall pick in James Wiseman. He has been injury prone, but the Warriors do expect him back at some point, and he's going to be another asset for this team. You think about a guy like Jordan Poole with what he has meant for this team. You think about a guy who is up and coming like Jonathan Kuminga. This is all about drafting. This is all about developing. And of course, first and foremost, it's all about evaluating talent as well, because people can put the focus on the draft lottery all they want and having a top 5 pick, having a top 3 pick, having the number 1 overall pick. And you think about the Timberwolves. Timberwolves had 2 number 1 picks on the team and they still couldn't get it done. And I'm talking about Wiggins and Karl Anthony Towns. And of course, Karl Anthony Towns is still there. But you think about Klay Thompson, you think about Steph Curry. Yes, they were lottery picks, but they were not top 5 picks. And then, of course, Draymond Green was not taken until the second round. So that comes down to talent evaluation, also the ability to develop your players as well. So I'm looking at this right now for the Golden State Warriors. This team ain't going away anytime soon. We saw the emergence of Kevon Looney on the boards during this playoff run for Golden State. Obviously, they're going to look to re-sign him long term. You look at a guy like Gary Payton II. Obviously, he was not a draft pick of the Golden State Warriors, but you know what? They saw his defensive prowess. And of course, he's not as good as his father was defensively. And that's not a slight on Gary Payton II. I mean, his dad was a Hall of Famer, and his dad was called the glove for a reason. But Gary Payton did have that elbow injury in the second round against Memphis. He was able to come back for these finals, and his perimeter defense did make a difference in this series as they wore down the Boston Celtics. And again, I go back and you go back and look at the film from Gary Payton's collegiate days at Oregon State. This guy was a Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year. He could get it done, and I don't think that he ever got enough credit for that. And once again, he has gotten and fallen into the right spot and the right team with the Golden State Warriors. Otto Porter Jr., another high pick once upon a time in the NBA. People forget this guy, his last year in college at Georgetown, he was the Big East Player of the Year. And, he's another one, a lot of length. He can score. Then also he can play some solid defense. So right now, to me, once again, Otto Porter Jr. is a guy who fit in with the perfect team at the right time. Now, this Warriors defense, which was top five throughout the regular season, they, they just really to me, I think they wore down the Boston Celtics offensively, most notably Jason Tatum. And with that said, I don't think that the Celtics did themselves too many favors in this series, as they try to keep doing things that are not their strengths. And at some point, it's going to catch up to you. You can get away with it in the regular season, but the playoffs are a different beast. And I'm talking about the perimeter shooting. We saw it in game five where Boston really focused too much on the three-point shot, and it came back and cost them. And that right there was a golden opportunity for Boston to re-seize control of this series, because you remember after Boston won game three, a lot of people felt like, what, this series was really teetering in favor of the Celtics. And if they won game four, that was going to be it. Golden State answered the bell in game number four. Boston still had an opportunity to go up 3-2 in game five, with the series coming back to Beantown for game six. And of course, Steph Curry not having a good shooting night really enhanced their chances, but Boston was unable to capitalize on that, and they paid for that. And then we saw last night with game six, the Celtics came out strong. The Warriors were able to withstand that. And then once they got going, most notably Steph Curry, they were off to the races. And as good as the Celtics were defensively this season, they never had an answer for the most part for Steph Curry in this series. A couple of 34-point games. We saw the 43-point game earlier on in this series, and of course, the 34-point game last night to close out the Celtics, as it simply looked like child's play for the best three-point shooter to have ever done it. Now, for the Celtics, I talk about the three-point shooting. This team, they attempted 37 three-point shots per game during the regular season, and they only made 13 of those. And, I know that the trend in the NBA right now is for a lot of teams to shoot three-point shots, but at the end of the day, if you don't have the personnel to get it done consistently from deep, it's a waste of time. It's a detriment to your team, and you're bailing out the opposing team while doing it. You think about the Celtics' two best players. Obviously, they're Jaylen Brown and they're Jason Tatum. And as good as Tatum and Brown are, they're not perimeter players. Jaylen Brown is at his best when he's posting up and getting to the basket. The same can be said for Jason Tatum, but too often we see them focus on the three-point shot, and to me, it's a detriment. You look at Marcus Smart; he's on and off from outside. The same can be said for somebody like Al Horford. Al Horford is a solid passer. He's also still, dependable in the post as an offensive threat. But you know what? When you're going to keep posting up Al Horford from deep, advantage the opposing team. And, the three-point shot works for the Golden State Warriors. That's because they have the personnel to get it done. Everybody in the NBA does not have that personnel. You think back to last year's finals when the Milwaukee Bucks beat the Phoenix Suns. After going down 2-0 in that series, Milwaukee just got back to playing big man ball. They realized that they had a size advantage over Phoenix, and they went to work and they exploited it. And of course, the rest is history. I think possibly things could have been a little bit different in this series for the Celtics had they focused on their strengths and not their weaknesses. Now, for the Celtics, will they find a way to get championship number 18 in franchise history. They're right there because you think about it. This was the first year for head coach Ime Udoka. He focused so much on defensive basketball, and the defensive prowess of the Celtics really showed up throughout this run to the NBA Finals. But nonetheless, I think what they have to do once again with their two best players in Brown and Tatum are focus on their strengths, and their strengths are playing closer to the basket, not being a perimeter team. I think the Celtics should continue to work on their depth, find maybe another presence in the backcourt, find, a quintessential point guard. And this is no disrespect to Marcus Smart, but they need that quintessential point guard to be that floor general. That's something that will really help them out. And they would continue to add depth and possibly more size because you think about it, the Celtics, they did beat the Milwaukee Bucks in the second round this year in an epic 7-game series, but the Bucks did not have Chris Middleton in that series. And obviously, when he's there, he helps to the size advantage to that Milwaukee has. If you're Boston, you still have to contend with the likes of Miami and Philadelphia, Milwaukee, and possibly Brooklyn in the Eastern Conference in order to get out of there, in order to get back to the finals. And it's not going to be easy. So these are things that have to be factored in for the Boston Celtics heading into the offseason as they look to win title number 18. But on the flip side, for the Dubs, you think about it, everything came together at the right time. Steve Kerr now has championship number 4 as a head coach in the NBA. You think about a guy that won 3 championships as a player with the Chicago Bulls, and also won as a member of the San Antonio Spurs. And he's just adding to his wonderful basketball resume. But you think about it, the Warriors, they are poised and they're in a very good spot to get championship number 5. You have some young teams that are on the way up in the Western Conference that the Warriors definitely still have to contend with. The likes of the Memphis Grizzlies and the Dallas Mavericks are 2 right there. But it's a solid blend of veterans and youth for the Golden State Warriors, especially when you have a front office that is going to leave no stone unturned in regards to putting a championship product out there. The Warriors will once again be right back in that mix for 2023 to claim another NBA championship. But with that said, the Warriors came into this playoffs expecting to make a run. Obviously, things changed once the Phoenix Suns were eliminated in the second round. Not to take anything away from the Dallas Mavericks, but that was a matchup that a lot of people were expecting to happen in the Western Conference Finals. It did not. And honestly, I still think the Warriors would have beaten the Suns if they had met in the finals. And then on top of that, getting here to the NBA Finals, weathering the storm that was the Boston Celtics, because you think about the mystique and the history of that Celtics franchise and what they've meant to the NBA for so long. Going into Boston, I know it's not the Boston Garden, but going into the Boston Garden, it's to the city of Boston, is still a very difficult place to win. It's always a hostile crowd. The fans will really, leave their emotions out there on the court, to say the least. But nonetheless, the Warriors, you know what? They kind of had ice water in their veins. They feed off of that negative environment, and of course, the rest is history. So the Warriors, the party has already begun for them in Boston. They're going to take it back to the Bay Area. Their fans are going to celebrate with them, and Golden State is going to look to do it again next year as NBA champions, trying to make it 5 titles in 9 years. But for the moment, they're going to party out in the Bay Area for the Dubs, and let's see if they can come back and do it again one more time in 2023. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take the time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the Sports Discussion Group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I am signing off, saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.